We can get going here. Hi, everybody. This is Zen Honeycutt of Moms Across America. It is October 15th. This is our weekly Moms Connect call. Moms Across America, our mission is to educate and empower millions to transform the food industry, the environment, health in America, and beyond. That's our new expanded mission, and I'm excited because it does include the environment and health, all kinds of health aspects. So if there is something that is impacting your family's health, your children's health, we are concerned about it. We're especially concerned about toxins, especially food supply and toxins in the food supply. So when we're going to get started, but I'd like to have people briefly introduce themselves, just say your name and where you're from. And please do mention if you have a topic that you want to talk about. I know Jessica wants to talk about getting glyphosate out of schools today, so we're going to start with that. But we're going to go around first and just have people introduce themselves, your city, your state, where you're from. If you are with a certain organization or you have a certain background that you'd like to mention, please do mention that as well. So we're going to start with Jessica. I'll unmute people just so that we don't have other people doing it. So I'll unmute you. And although Jessica looks like she may have said it, so I can't unmute her. Jessica?
I unmuted now. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No. So because I went to the Monsanto Trial of the century.
No, actually, can you just start with your name and where you're from?
Oh, sorry.
And then we'll come back to you to do this.
Sure. I'm Jessica Denning in Sacramento, California.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And then Frankie, I don't know why I can never unmute you. So you're from Michigan or Wisconsin? No, Detroit. Frankie from Detroit. And for some reason, we can't ever really get her on to talk. So thank you for being on with us. And Ann.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Temple. The organization I'm with is Moms Across America, and I'm outside Milwaukee on a farm in Wisconsin. And I have some stuff I could mention, but I can wait till later because I know Jessica wants to talk, so. Okay,
great. So we'll come back. We'll swing back around to you, Ann. Thank you so much. And then Carol.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carol. I'm a board member of Moms Across America, and I'm the host of Food Integrity Now and the Health and Wellness Coach. And I'm from Murrieta, California.
Great. Thank you for being on with us, Carol. Appreciate it.
Yes.
And Julie.
Hi, Julie Bjornson from Stuart, Florida, where we're fighting to ban glyphosate, and I've been restoring dying citrus groves that have been damaged by Roundup and glyphosate for the past several years. So my chemist is coming tomorrow, and we're touring groves that are coming back to life.
That's wonderful. We're going to get to Isabel in just a second, but Julie, can you please remind me, I want to share an article with you about glyphosate and citrus groves that I'm putting out soon. Maybe I can grab a little quote from you or a comment about the work that you're doing, okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. And Isabel, please, let me unmute you. Wait, hang on. It's not unmuting. I think maybe you might need to do it.
There we go.
There you go.
Like I'm eating.
Okay, hi, my name is Isabel Minozzi. I'm from Connecticut, and I am working on my local communities and trying to improve the health of my community by making them aware of the toxic chemicals around us. So I did want to ask your advice. My health food store invited me to have a table, Moms Across America table at the store next weekend, actually next Friday. So yeah, if you have any advice, like what else to talk about, then, that's what I'm planning on bringing is all the literature that I have from you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any other advice, I'd love it.
Okay, great. Awesome. We'll get back to that. We'll talk to Jessica and then Ann, and we'll come back and we'll talk about what you can do and what you can say at a booth. And when we come back to you, Ann's saying she can hardly hear you. So just speak a little bit closer to your microphone when we come back to you. Okay? Okay, great. So Jessica, will you please give us an update on what's happening with getting glyphosate out of is it your school district or your school?
We're working district by district. And
great.
So, and also we're working I'm Sacramento, and it started with the Monsanto Trial of the century. now is the time for everybody to go to your school boards and say, look, it costs $289 million for one person. And, you know, how many people do you have working for you that are exposed to Roundup? So, I mean, it's a huge liability. Not only that, you're spraying it where the kids are. So, I mean, Lee Johnson's biggest regret, he told me, was that he sprayed it where the children play and where the teachers are. So it's time. It's time to not just get glyphosate out. We don't want to use those words. We want to say to move to an organic approach to landscape management. And so Kathleen Hall did this in Irvine. If you go to non-toxic Irvine, you can see her models there. She has the NTI toolkit, non-toxic Irvine toolkit. You can download, give to your district. You can actually swap out products, but you should soil test and see the health of your soil so that it's a bottoms-up approach where you have good full turf and you don't have room for weeds, which is what Irvine did, and they're very happy. And she also was able to link it with the city, and so the whole parks also in the city are, and the public places are organic in Irvine. And other places are doing that too, because there's a linkage, and we want to do that in Sacramento. So we went to the school board a couple of times with a bunch of parents. Susan Lang just said, you know, I want to go talk to the school board. So we went, and we're kind of rattling a few cages. And what we got was, I was able to get the pesticide use reports, the PURs. In California, they must turn them in every month, every single school. And they only gave you the ones for Roundup, so they should be giving you one for all the different pesticides they're using, strychnine, and things for rats and cockroaches and so on. So I still have to get the rest of the records. They clearly were not keeping adequate records. They admitted they weren't. And so then they're spraying in the morning, and in a valley like Sacramento, the inversion layer means it hangs around the cloud of Roundup is hanging around the children all day. So inversion layer is the ground is cold in the morning and the air is warm. So then there are lots of things that were wrong about what they were doing. Not their fault. They're doing the best they can with the information we have. But they're clear that they're out of compliance with their own integrated pest management plan. This is what I said to the school board. You're out of compliance because your integrated pest management, your IPM says that you cannot use any Prop 65 chemical in the schools. So we got an appointment with the head of maintenance and operations, the assistant superintendent and the manager, and sat down with them. And Kathleen Halal flew up, and Dr. Kelly Sutton came from Rhode Island and happened to be here. We just, all the stars aligned with this delightful kindergarten mom, Jessica Thompson. And so what Jessica said was her principal wanted to do a test, have her school be a test pilot. So today, Frank, the assistant superintendent, sent us a letter saying that he's going to do the no Roundup approach in Little John, which is the first pilot school for the organic approach in California, in Sacramento, how can I say, in the San Juan School District, which is 7th largest district in California. Has 60 school sites. So we just want to get it started on one site. Also, we're Kathleen Halal, because we have come to meet a delightful lady, Liza Grandia from Woodland. She has gotten a commitment from Woodland, which is the hometown of the Monsanto World Food Center, to go with the organic approach to their landscaping. And she herself has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you have somebody on your team who is directly mortally impacted by these pesticides, like Lisa, you know, Almendarez Guillermo had in Temecula, her son got migraines for 2 months, missed 2 months of school, then she turned everybody around to her point of view in her town, including her district and so on. So anyway, Liza, so we want to include Woodland if we can with this, and we're getting a grant. We're asking for a grant to pay for the conversion. Also, the principal offered that she would like to use her charter school funds to help make the transition. And so with Kathleen Hall's help, she has non-toxic neighborhoods, and she's the one that worked with a non-toxic Irvine site in the beginning. And now that Kim Conti is running that site. She was one of the founders with Capri, and they worked on it all together. I wasn't part of it then, but you can look on that site, Non-Toxic Irvine, which is now called Non-Toxic Neighborhoods, or you can look on Non-Toxic Communities. And we're redoing that website, so it should be up in the middle of November in a fresh new way to Non-Toxic Communities. So that's kind of what's going on, really exciting. And we have anyone in California, or you could do it in other states too, but we have California schools, California Families for Non-Toxic Schools. And then we have a dash and you put the name of your district. So Sac City is now asking to do that, and other districts are joining in. Any district can join in California, but you could make the same kind of thing in other states. That's what's happened.
Great. Can you say, for the people who are interested in doing this, what was the first thing that you did? I think you mentioned going to the school board meeting. So did you have to get permission for that, or did you just show up, or did you talk to any of the school board members before?
No, we did.
First thing? How did you get this started?
That's a really good point, Zen. We just looked up on the schedule because it's a retired teacher. And so I'm retired. I don't feel like I'm going to get blowback like a parent or an employee in the district would get. And I grew up, and all my kids went to San Juan, and my brothers and sisters. So I went to the school board meeting, and I talked with Trent Allen, who was the person that signed us in. He's the PR guy for the district. And basically, I just worked with him. Because all you can do at the school board meeting is you get 2 or 3 minutes to talk. Anything you want. And I told the story about Lee Allen and showed the pictures of the lesions that cover 80% of his body. And that his biggest regret was spraying it with children's playing. So you only get 2 minutes. You'll be surprised how fast it goes. But I did get them on the radar, and that produced contact with the assistant superintendent, who, nobody wants to spray poison. But he just doesn't know that, because all he's ever heard is from Monsanto, right? So we have now got Irvine, we've got Connecticut, which has been organic, the whole state for their schools, and New York, that's organic also. So there's, Marin County and many other places that are coming on board, and when you show them that there are the models. So first thing we did was go there. Lisa just got a hold of our maintenance guy and went in and told her stories. So sometimes you can just work with maintenance. And that's what I said to Frank. Said, listen, we could have started with you from the get-go. I didn't mean to embarrass you at the school board meeting. I just didn't know who to contact because it's a huge district. But you could, look around for your person in charge of maintenance and email them and ask for a meeting with parents and other experts. You can bring a doctor. If you can get an organic landscaper, you could turn the whole district in one meeting. So they just want to know what to do because nobody wants the poison.
That's a great point. So I'd like to just point out for people, the same type of thing happened in my town in Mission Viejo. We went to the city council, but it ended up that we ended up having the meetings one-on-one with the IPM, right? The integrated pest managers, management managers.
Cool.
So what the city council and often the school board will want you to do is work it out with the people who are in charge of that. Some of them are hesitant to sort of tell them what to do, or they don't want to tell them what to do because they don't know. They're not the experts, or they may not have the political will. Like they're concerned about being reelected, and they don't want to be the one to have the town spend more money because they think that it might cost more money, right? So a lot of the times it might be good to start with the people who actually do the spraying and like you're saying, the landscapers at the school, the janitorial landscaper or land management people, or in the case of the town, the city managers, right? And the integrated.
But you just brought up a great point, Zen, which is the election is this month. And so all these people running for school board, we plan to go to meet the candidates night and ask them questions, about this Monsanto verdict and the liability and the fact that Monsanto lied about it all this time. Well, this fellow went and sprayed for a whole nother year until he was, what do you call it when you know you're going to die? What's the word for terminal? Till he was terminal. They could have told him and he could have stopped it. So, you can ask them questions now and then they can get on the record because they want to get elected. Because right now there's a groundswell for going organic. And you can say at Irvine, that it leveled out. It didn't turn out to be any more expensive. We worked to get grants if you need anything for transition and support you. And some parents have said they'll go in and weed. I mean, it's all kinds of different approaches. Some cities are getting steamers, which is one way to do it. But I mean, we just have to work with what we have.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you again for bringing that up. It is election time, folks. I was filling out my mail-in ballot last night, and I was ready to mail it all in, but I was like, wait a second, there's a bunch of people up for school board.
Right.
And I don't want to just randomly vote for somebody. I want to know what they want to do. So I am going to either call our office or go to whatever meetings that they're going to have, and I'm going to find out whether or not that school board member is in favor of spraying Roundup and other toxic chemicals, right, in our school board district. Right. So, because that's really important. I could be voting for somebody, because they're a woman or because, I like what they said about something else, then find out that they're heavily invested in spraying toxic chemicals all over the place. So now is the time to find out what your school board officials would like to do, what your Orange County, I don't know if there's supervisors being elected right now or representative, definitely your representatives, what are they interested in doing? Are they interested in getting rid of glyphosate and going organic or not? So very good point. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Okay, and I'm going to go.
Okay, awesome. And say hi to Pam. Give her a huge hug for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye. Okay, great. And so we just had Kelly on. I just want to say hi, Kelly. Can you introduce yourself? I'm going to unmute you for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I have a new headphone.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Kelly Ryerson. I'm Glyphosate Girl. So I've been blogging the trial, and we had a big update. I don't know if you want me to go into it now or just.
Yeah, sure. Go into it now, and then later on we'll go back. We'll come back to Julie and Ann. Yeah. Great.
Okay, awesome. So it was actually a very sad day, as Zen knows, because I went up and we didn't know what was going to happen with the trial. We knew like these different motions had been filed by Monsanto to either have a new trial and an appeal or just to completely overturn the verdict, which is something I actually didn't know until this, that a judge can just say, actually, I don't agree with the jury at all, and I prefer this outcome, which just doesn't seem very democratic, but so it is. And right before we went in, Michael Baum actually came over. He's like, did you hear about the tentative ruling? And I was like, oh, I mean, there was like a lot of commotion out there. And I was like, no. And I was actually sitting next to one of the Monsanto attorneys. I didn't know he was Monsanto. Actually, he was just a nice guy. And I was like, did you hear about this tentative ruling? And he said, yeah. And he handed me the paper. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. And he just was like mute. I think he actually felt bad. And in it said, so it's called JNOV, so judgment notwithstanding verdict. And there were several things in there that sounded like Bolanos was just going to completely overrule everything that the jury did. Now, I was sitting among jurors, 10 jurors came, and they were so upset. And they are not emotional people. Like I can say they're nice, but they're not emotional. And one of them behind me was like, well, then why did we sit here all summer? And the other was like, I can't believe this is happening. They did all this work and it was just taken away. And poor Lee Johnson is sitting up there in the front. I can't imagine what he's going through and how she could make that kind of decision in front of him. And so then what happened? So then everything got rolling. Bolanos comes in and Lombardi does another beautiful job, as he does, like when he defends Philip Morris in claiming that all these faults with the trial, primarily surrounding the behavior of Brent Wisner, which truthfully didn't seem that bad to me, even though, I feel like I was trying to look and see whether
but that's what they do, Kelly, right? Is they attack.
But that is what they do. So it's typical.
Yeah,
right.
They attack the person and not the issue. And we knew that they were going to appeal because that's what they need to do. They have to protect their corporate profits. Right.
That's right. And so, so Brent was on a speakerphone in the front and trying to defend himself here and there, even though they had kind of made an agreement. I think he wasn't going to pipe in, but I think it was really hard because he was being just completely lied about by Monsanto. Mike Miller stepped in and he hadn't been to any of these trials because he'd been sick. And so, but he suddenly took over for on behalf of Johnson, and he got all these details wrong about the trial. And I mean, it was so uncomfortable, and all of us were like, this is horrible. And Bolanos was so annoyed with him that he didn't know the details. And so it was just watching everything it was really, really a hard day. then
Wait, hang on a second. Can I ask a question? Can
Yeah.
you give us an example of what they said was wrong with Brent Wisner's behavior? Because I was there. I saw him too in the closing statements. I'm just
Well, that's
curious.
right.
What did
So
they say was so wrong with his behavior?
So what they say is so wrong is that he said during closing, as you know, this is your opportunity to change the world. That's something that I guess he shouldn't have said, because it should only be, I guess when you're making your legal argument, it shouldn't ever be about society at large. It should only be about the plaintiff in the case. There are other things that he did, like when he said, make a change so that Monsanto, this is a big one, so that Monsanto can't celebrate. They have their champagne chilled to celebrate in that boardroom when this verdict comes out. And I guess that was inflammatory and like false. But then when you talk to the jury, they're like, of course that was like just colorful. It wasn't like we were like, oh, well then, we should vote this way. But interestingly, Bolanos was supposed to make a decision that day. And I think that Mike Miller was able to convince her to keep the door a little bit open after he apologized at length for Brent Wisner's like erratic behavior or something, which isn't true, but I could see she liked that. And so they each side had to write 20 pages of a condensed argument about why she should not or overturn the verdict. And so then we left and we were all depressed. And then actually I got an email from a juror with a copy of a letter that they are writing to Bolanos, not just him, but several other jurors, because they're really upset about it. And it just felt, I can't even tell you what it feels like to sit there 10 feet away from the corruption that you see happening and not say anything. It was hard for me not to scream because it was so wrong. And once again, you look at Johnson, you're like, ah. So now we're waiting. Any day now she'll come out with her ruling. And I think the best we can hope for is just a new trial appeal. And of course, the devastation would be if she just overturned the whole thing.
Oh.
So hang on a second. Is this a thing that you can actually write to a judge? Is it just the jury that can do that, or can anybody do that?
Well, that's a good question. I think the thought was, I think that the clerk wrote to them and said Bolanos is seeking opinions of the jurors. And so then they responded to her and submitted it. Because I think she must have seen they were all sitting there.
Well, she has their opinion. They sat there for 8 weeks and gave her their opinion, which was guilty on all counts.
All counts. All 16.
It's not like they suddenly changed their mind in the past few weeks.
No. And the other thing that's interesting is another complaint that Monsanto has is, so Dr. Naban was the person that is like a cancer physician, and he went through all the different possible causes of Johnson's cancer during the trial. And before he went into making a physical list on the wall, he said, of course, it could just be idiopathic, meaning we don't know where it came from. But if it's not, then these are the potential causes. Well, Monsanto says because he didn't write up on the whiteboard that idiopathic was one of the causes, and he only said it, therefore that really misled the jury to think that it had to be, Roundup. I mean, it's so crazy. And so actually I had talked to Dr. Nadan, who in my blog you might remember is the hot one, and he said that he truly doesn't understand this argument, because if you look at the transcript you can see how many times he said it could be we don't know what, but there's also this possibility. So I don't even know where they're really able to come with that. I have to read the submission that Baum Hedlund just put in, their 20-page argument. Oh, it's so dismissive. The corruption is so bad.
They sent it to us on Friday, right? The 20 pages that Baum Hedlund. Yeah. Didn't they send us both?
They sent us both.
Okay, yeah.
And I thought, it's sort of still the same arguments from what I read, because I skimmed like the first 10 pages and I was like, I had to go and do something else. But, I think it's going to come down to whether or not because the other thing that, I don't know if you have time for me to say this, but the other thing that Bolanos said was that she was confused that Monsanto hadn't tested the formulated product of Roundup. I mean, we spent so long in court learning that there's a difference between pure glyphosate and the formulated product with the surfactants. And she looked absolutely so confused, like this was the first she'd heard of it. And she said, well, they've tested it. The EPA knows. And Mike Miller's like, no, they haven't. She said, well, yes, they have. Well, I think after that, she must have looked because I think she suddenly had a little question in her head. But I mean, we spent a week just on that. And I'm like, where were you? I mean, it's bizarre. I don't know if she forgot. I mean, she hasn't really been following the science that well, clearly.
Okay, so this judge is about to rule whether or not this product in its final formulation can cause cancer or contributed to Johnson's cancer, and she's not aware of the fact that the EPA does not require final formulation testing. That is absolutely unethical and unscientific and not justice at all. I was in the room when even Lombardi, Monsanto's lawyer, said the plaintiff's lawyer cannot produce one organization that wants final formulation testing. He said there's a reason for that, right? He said that, I'm sorry, it's reverberating a little bit, but he said that there's a reason for that. You can't make the animal sick and then get the results out, get the data out of them. He even admitted that it would make the animal sick if they did final formulation testing.
Right. That's exactly it. And back when Dr. Perry, the first specialist that they hired, I remember in the 90s.
Your sound is getting all garbled. Is there any way you can... Okay,
is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, go ahead.
Back in the 90s, they had hired scientist Dr. Perry to go through the formulation. He made recommendations, and Monsanto was like, we don't like these recommendations. You're fired. They hired someone else in. The recommendations he had made was we need very specific studies on the formulation. And so Monsanto's been claiming they did those studies. It's just we haven't seen them. Then Bolanos says, we've seen them. They're around. They're cited everywhere. And all of us are like, where? Where did she see those studies? I mean, the jurors didn't see the studies. There are no studies. Like, there's one out of like the 4 that he recommended. So she just had missed that part. But you know what? Lombardi has paved over it very, very well so that it doesn't sound like an issue in her ear. Like, they're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, well, she's clearly been listening to what they're saying, but not to what Brent Wisner was saying.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, because so many people for so long have been hearing, we have hundreds of studies showing the safety of glyphosate, and so that's sort of like ingrained in people's...
Yeah, it's like 800 studies show. I'm like, well, no, we don't see them. You're making these up.
Yeah, and some of the studies that we have seen, I'm just going to mute you for a second because I'm getting it, but some of the studies that we have seen, for instance, I did a Freedom of Information Act after we went to the EPA because we found glyphosate in breast milk, and they said to me, we have hundreds of studies showing that glyphosate is safe. That's why we approved it. And I'm like, I haven't seen those studies. Where are those studies? So I went home and did a Freedom of Information Act, and 6 months later, I get, I think it was 20 and then maybe 40. I had to keep asking them for more tests, for more results, because they don't just give you everything all at once. I guess they just make you really work for it. So I think in the end, I might have gotten 40 studies or so. And they showed things like, for instance, okay, so what they do is they look at things regarding toxicology, right? And the toxicology means more than 50% of the animals die. Toxic, something that is toxic is deemed toxic if more than 50% of the animals die within that 96 hours, right? From a certain level of exposure. And so one of the studies showed that within 4 days, and I quote, within 4 days, most of the oysters were closed and not feeding. So this was considered showing safety because the oysters didn't die. They were just closed and not feeding. So, but what happened on the 5th day or the 6th day? So this is an example of one of the hundreds of studies that show that glyphosate is not toxic. For example, another one is 5.2 parts per million of the white shrimp above that level, and then the white shrimp died within 4 days, right? But it wasn't 50% of them all at once. So, they were like, well, it's not toxic. So, and what's the size of a 6-week-old fetus? It's the size of a shrimp, right? And how long does glyphosate stay viable in dark, salty water? 315 days. What's in our womb? Dark, salty water, right? So these connections are not being made by the EPA because they just look at the one ingredient. They just look at toxicology. They just look at short term. They're so limited in their scope that it becomes actually unscientific, and it's not accurate. And then we have Supreme Court judges sitting on the bench here, making a decision about a product when they don't even understand the basic science and the basic policy. This is absolutely an atrocity. And if she overturns that ruling, this is, I can't even imagine, like people are calling for in the chat over here. We have to do something big. I really do wish that she could hear from the thousands of people that have signed, it's probably over 1 million now, people that have signed petitions to ban glyphosate and to take action. So does anybody have any other questions for Kelly?
Just thank you for doing all the research, because
you're welcome.
And just getting this first-hand account is just such amazing information. So thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy to do it.
Even though I'm crying right now.
I know. I was in a bad state. Zen said, "Hey, do you want to do a Facebook Live?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to meet the jury members.
Me too.
Of course, once this is done, we would like to follow up. If you got any of their information, we'd like to follow up and interview some of them, because they
sure.
They really did a service to humanity. And if she overturns their verdict, I don't understand why we even have a jury system.
No, I don't either. There's no point. I was saying this is like North Korea, and they're like, it's not quite that bad. I'm like, but it's like a fake jury then.
Well, they're just changing the laws, because jury trial was supposed to judge the law before they judge the person. So they've thrown the law out so that you can't judge the person. Yeah. Crazy. It is absolutely absurd. I've never heard of a judge overruling a jury.
No.
I'm so depressed.
What happened is Brent and his firm, what are they saying about this? Have you heard their response?
Yeah, so they were feeling really bad right after the tentative ruling, right going into the hearing. And Brent wasn't there. He, I think because there had been several files that had been made by Monsanto about articles of him in press where he's saying, it's so exciting, this is the beginning of like a new era and that kind of thing. And she said, and she submitted it to, Volnos submitted it to the court, because she said we should talk about like these emotions or whatever, and if they're appropriate.
Yes.
And so he didn't show up. He didn't show up to the trial because it was clear that it was going to be like, I don't know, controversial. And when he would pipe in on the speakerphone, she would just be rolling her eyes and so pissed that he's even calling in. And I'm like, poor Brent, my gosh, you just did this amazing service to humanity.
Robert Kennedy, he's part of the same thing. Did he have a comment to make?
He didn't have a comment. He wasn't there. He and Brent were missing. Everyone else was there, and David Dickens was there, but because Mike Miller is his boss, Mike Miller did the talking, but I was kind of like, oh, maybe you should have David Dickens because he was there for the trial.
In California, do you have something called a slap suit where they don't allow you to talk against an organization that might cause them financial harm? In Florida, we have a slap suit that drags our people through hell, millions of dollars.
Oh, really? No, I don't know.
It's called SLAAP, and if you need more information, you need to look into that, because that's what it sounds like, because they're attacking what he said, not the facts that were presented.
I see. That's good to know. I'm going to look at that. Michael Baum was feeling bummed, but then he felt reinvigorated after he went back and like collected, because the evidence is still there. So as far as what they have control over, they know the evidence is still there. So ultimately, I think he probably thinks, I mean, I shouldn't misquote him, but I think the sentiment there of all the attorneys is that this will probably end up in appeal. So they bring all of the evidence.
Again, that whole character thing is an overlay of the slap suit. And it has nothing to do with the facts in the trial at all, but they're confusing the issue right now. That's the way I see it.
Well, and that's how Monsanto works. They love to confuse the issue, and they love to attack the character of somebody rather than the actual.
And they don't want you to know what the law is. And so when you don't know the law, they'll just keep dragging you. We've got one of our commissioners a $4 million suit right now, but she's winning it. But it's been one appeal after another because it was just a slap suit.
Oh gosh. Okay, that's good to know.
And let's remind all the listeners or people who are watching too that there are 8,700 lawsuits against Monsanto, and this verdict does not mean that those lawsuits will go away. Those lawsuits are still coming forward, and there's one coming up. Is it December or January in St. Louis, in which they will be able to.
I thought it was this month.
Is it this month?
Yeah.
No, it was postponed.
Yeah, it was postponed. It was supposed to be this month.
2019. Yeah.
To January, right?
Yeah. Actually, it may now be the beginning of February because it's going to be exactly at the same time as the federal trial in San Francisco. Okay. So they're going to be two going at the same time, which is great. More
right.
merrier.
So this other lawsuit that's happening in St. Louis means that the plaintiffs can subpoena people like Donna Farmer, who lives in that state, and that she will have to come to the stand. So, and the other thing is that the lawyers from Baum, Hedlund, Aristei, and Goldman said that they only got to present about 20% of the documents that were in the discovery, they found in the discovery process, showing the collusion between the EPA and Monsanto. So there's a lot more information to be revealed, and we are excited for them to be able to reveal that information. And perhaps, do you know that if this is appealed, can they bring up more information, or will they only be able to reassess the same information?
I think they're only able to reassess the same information that was shown in the first trial because it's supposed to be a reevaluation of that trial. Okay. But so Brent is one of the attorneys that is going to be on the federal trial in February. And I think at that point, he's going to be able to bring in a lot more evidence because he's with this one from the beginning, unlike this first trial that was Mike Miller until his injury. So Brent has tons of stuff he said he's ready to show. So hopefully it gets passed and he can show it.
Well, how come the autism groups have not gotten a hold of this and been supportive of what you're doing with this, or even the glyphosate trial? It doesn't make sense because they all know the glyphosate's causing the problem.
Well, it is strange.
Yeah, well, no, there are a lot of autism groups that do share this information. I think many of them are just super focused on vaccines. And so, they're excited that we're doing what we're doing. We're excited that they're doing what they're doing. We try to support and share each other's information back and forth. I think really there's just so many hours in the day, and sometimes you have to eat lunch. So I don't fault anybody for.
I was just wondering because it just seems like we just need to gather together more.
Yeah, we do. We need to get together more. And there's been many events, vaccine events and GMO events and glyphosate events where there's only been 200 people that show up when we were hoping for thousands. And I think it's just a matter of overload for people or not reaching them or regarding the urgency. I don't know what it is, but this is a very crucial case, and the information is very important that you brought for us today.
Life or death is what it is. It's not even vaccine. It's life or death. We've got that counterfeit glycine molecule that's getting into our protein, human protein production, and it's going to cause havoc in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, well, it's already causing havoc in a lot of people. We're having, 1 out of 2 of our children having a chronic illness, and 1 out of 2 males with cancer, and 1 out of 3 females with cancer expected to get cancer in America today. I don't know how much worse it can get, except for everybody. So, Julie, can we shift to Julie? Is that okay, Kelly?
Yeah, great.
If you think of something else, let us know. Julie, you are addressing the glyphosate being sprayed in orange groves in Florida. Can you please give us an update of what's happening there? And first of all, we want to acknowledge you for having Stuart, Florida, right? Is it glyphosate free or toxin free?
The city of Stuart has banned glyphosate. Roundup.
That's awesome. Great job.
And new commissioners that went in. Now I'm working with Martin County, and I have a meeting with the staff on Thursday of this week. And they're looking for alternatives because where we are in Florida, we have a lot of standing water and ponds and wetlands, and we're dealing with the algae bloom, we're dealing with the red tide, we're dealing with the dying fish and the closed beaches. And so it's becoming more and more prevalent. I went into the Restore shop today to take things in, and she's talking about banning glyphosate. So people are talking, which is great. But the orange groves, I have been dealing with that because a long time ago, I realized I work in brain health and functional brain neurology, which is a PhD postgraduate program. And I can't keep the brain, I can get you well, I can't keep you well with the glyphosate that's in the food and the toxins that are in the food. So I started fighting a food source, and that ended up being the orange groves. And I work with a chemist, and we're restoring dying groves with citrus greening, which is all caused by the Roundup allowed by the University of Florida, which is mandated by Monsanto. So they're just killing the trees on purpose. So we go in there at no charge and restore groves so that there's no glyphosate in the orange juice so the kids can drink orange juice again. Wow. That's what, but it's very difficult because we have a chemical culture. People don't like weeds. I don't know what it is. It's all about weeds. And so it's the water hyacinth in Lake Okeechobee. They're there. It keeps the cyanobacteria down, but they want to kill the weeds because the boater, it doesn't look nice, or it gets in the way of the boaters, and then they spray the glyphosate and it puts the phosphate in the water. It causes the cyanobacteria. It causes the red tide. It's released to the Gulf and the Atlantic. And people are in the hospital dying, having surgeries, their liver failure, kidney failure, and that nobody wants to take the blame for anything. Nobody wants to take responsibility. And it's absolutely a horrendous emergency down here, and nobody wants to take responsibility. But I'm out there one step at a time, fighting it. And even with the home gardeners, you've got to know just stopping Roundup doesn't take it out of the land. It can sit dormant for 10 years. You put some fertilizer on your land, it's going to release it, and it'll just come up and kill your crop or kill you. What would you like to know? It's just amazing. I shake my head. I am going to be going the first weekend in November, talking to the Miccosukee Indian tribe. They want to know what we know. So that's exciting.
And where's that Indian tribe?
That'll be down in Clewiston, just south of Lake Okeechobee.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the stat
outspoken Indian woman named Betty Osceola, and I've met with her. I've talked with her, and they're doing the healing of the water. I think it's called Healing Our Relationship with the Water. So that's great. I'll be speaking down there.
Great. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to be meeting with several, not meeting, but attending an event called Bioneers this weekend, which has probably hundreds of Native American tribal leaders. And so after this,
I'll talk to any of them.
Yes. I'll be talking to anybody and everybody I can.
It's about the children. You've got to get them because they care about their children so much. They don't care what they've done, but we've got to fix their brains. And I can do that. We can take those delayed development. We can neutralize the chemicals that are in them so that those brains can come up and they can learn. But we've got we need is a few people that care enough that want to learn this.
Yeah. So there is hope, everybody. You can get glyphosate out of the soil, out of your body, out of your brains, and you can recover. You just need to make a commitment to do that. And you just need to eliminate.
You have to know the right products too. I have two. Well, the one that I use with the groves, it goes in the land. It neutralizes the glyphosate and any of the chemicals actually that are in the land, and then adds the microorganisms so that the roots can absorb nutrients again, because without the microorganisms, you're not going to get nutrients to your plants.
What's it called?
It's called NutriSmart. You know Frank Dean. He helped you write that orange juice article.
Okay.
And I'll be meeting with him tomorrow. I'll be with him for 3 days touring groves.
Okay.
But NutriSmart, and then the other one, which I'll give you the name, is called Purinize. You can go on that website, purinize.com, and you can read the lab reports on that. And if you want to get a 15% discount, just use the word Oasis. I got that from the company just to let people know if they want to try the product. But I carry bottles around. I use that as my home. I found that product when I fought fluoride in my community and got it out of the county. I needed to be able to neutralize fluoride, but now it's been lab tested for fluoride, chloride, lead, mercury. Chromium-6 is now in the water systems. Lead, it was used up in Flint for the lead neutralization and helping the kids up there. So I'm talking fast because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I will be glad to repeat it or talk to anybody about what's available so that you can at least read the lab reports. Russia wanted to use it for radiation when there was the radiation explosion in Chernobyl. They used it up there. So it neutralizes radiation as well. And pharmaceuticals. I mean, it's just an amazing liquid product that you don't need any electricity to neutralize.
And this is Purinize, Puranize?
Purnize, Purinize.com.
Purinize, Purnize, no A.
No A, Purnize, Purinize.
And it's a liquid that you add to your water before you drink it?
Right, it's patented, yep. You can use 5 drops to coffee. You can put it in your beer, your wine, your any bottled drink, because I know that I don't think that they know how to get fluoride and pharmaceuticals out of any of the public water systems.
Wow, well, this is revolutionary. I appreciate if you wouldn't mind connecting me to the owners of these, of NutriSmart.
I can, and we can also use that on your local gardens, I mean your home gardens, because glyphosate is in the air, it's in the water, it's everywhere.
It's probably in the soil. I know that the person who owned our house before we began to rent it, I know that he sprayed Roundup. So, you know, lo and behold, my kids end up with these asthma type symptoms not long after we move into our house. The neighbor was spraying Roundup. You know, it's around.
I have 2 farms that will be Wednesday afternoon. One lady rescues mini horses, and her horses were getting sick. And I said, okay, well, let me take one of your paddocks and put some NutriSmart out there. And all of a sudden the grass came up. The horses are all grazing in that area, and they're starting to get healthy. So she's an advocate now. And then I'm going to another farm that's a trust that their horses and their animals were also getting cancers and sick. And they want me to neutralize, at least show them what they can do to neutralize that. So Frank and I are going out there on Wednesday afternoon.
Well, this is great news. Thank you so much for taking your precious time to be with us, Julie.
One more thing.
Also Kelly and all of you.
You've got to know that organic allows manure on the organic gardens, but they get the manure from GMO fed cows. So you've got to be able to treat the manure before it goes on. I said cows, but it's organic groves. You've got to be able to treat the manure before it goes on. Those are certified organic groves, or you're just going to be getting more glyphosate.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Very said we have to be able to neutralize the glyphosate in the fertilizers.
You can buy the soil at Home Depot and wherever, you know, but you get those 50-pound bags or 25. You've got to treat that for a week with the NutriSmart before you put it on your garden, or you're just going to be getting GMO and glyphosate. You've got to know how to stop it in your own backyard first. You know, in the water system, when you're traveling, there's fluoride everywhere. There's pesticides, there's pharmaceuticals, but you can't do the big. You got to start with your own home and your own body, because you got to stay healthy in order to fight the fight.
Yes, very good point. Please, everybody, stay healthy, get your sleep, eat your healthy food, find a way, like you're saying, to neutralize and restore your body. Thank you very much, Julie. And you had something you wanted to talk about?
Oh, can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
I need alternatives. When we're banning glyphosate, they're screaming at me for alternatives. The only thing I found so far is that steam treatment that can go into the groves. It can go and get the little weeds in the cracks so they don't get sued. But I need more and more alternatives. So please send us, please make a whole list on your website for alternatives.
Yes, so beyond pesticides, and I believe non-toxic, Irvine has a list. I also have a list of 10 alternatives to Roundup on Moms Across America. It was created by Baum, Hedlund, Arista, and Goldman law firm. So if you go to, let me share right now.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll show you. If you go to momsacrossamerica.org, you can click right here, 10 alternatives to Roundup. And I believe that beyond pesticides and non-toxic, Irvine have more of the brands. But all of us don't really promote just brands of alternatives, because what we really want is for people to use organic land care, which doesn't involve spraying any chemicals, right? It involves permaculture, right? It involves cover crops and mulch and steam, right? And seeing here, OSM is a high percentage vinegar product that you can use. It's not called a weed killer, but it can be used for that. There's a lot electric shock weed control. There's weed whacking. And then there's other types of, this is not brand names, but other types of products that you can look up. And then if you go to Beyond Pesticides or non-toxic Irvine, perhaps non-toxic communities will also have other brand names. But there's plants that you can plant too to keep pests and bugs away. And you know, cover cropping can prevent certain types of weeds. So, you know, it just takes a little bit of legwork to do this. That's all.
In my area, because we've got so much water around, it's a total difference with the boaters and the standing water and the water going down into the Everglades and having to deal with the phosphates and the high nitrogen or nutrient values that are causing extra blooms. It's challenging, but I'm trying to get mechanical harvesters for the water hyacinth, because that can be used for food for cattle, or it can be used for compost. 1 acre of hyacinth can compost 30 acres of land.
Really? Yeah. And hyacinth is considered a weed, isn't it?
It's aquatic weed. So now,
instead of killing these aquatic weeds with Roundup, they could be harvesting them and using them for organic compost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or for food for the cattle.
Not doing that. Yeah, or food for the cattle. Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. And when they do kill the hyacinth, then it releases the high nutrient. Tons and tons of phosphate and nitrogens are released, which are feeding our blooms. And it causes the oxygen to be used up, and the fish kills, and the porpoise, and the dolphins, and the oyster beds, and the seagrass, and tons. You should see, I don't know how many hundreds of tons of dead sea life has been pulled off of the Gulf Coast and our coast as well. It's amazing the amount of money that's being channeled just to get rid of this dying waste.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Julie. We are devastated by what's happening in Florida, and we are.
Yeah. You also have to know that the BMAA cancerous toxin, once it's in your system, it doesn't get out, and it's coming from seafood that they're harvesting in the algae area that's being sent out through the United States.
Oh.
So you've got to know that. You've got to know where. You better that you find somebody who organically raises, aquaculture, because you can't trust the fish anymore. You can't.
Yeah, you just
not in our area. Not area.
Yeah, and that's not something lightly said by somebody who lives in an area where the coastal industry is part of your economy. You're saying that to protect people, not just to hide the fact of what's going on in your state. Okay, so I want to point out though that there is good news. I just want people to look. We've updated this map, and thanks to Isabel, researching a lot of different other maps. Thank you, Isabel. And there's nearly 200. This is just the United States, but altogether there's nearly 200 that we've documented. I'm sure there are more. But, if you want to zoom in here somewhere and pick one, look what's going on up here in New England. Holy mackerel. You guys they're busy up there, right? So let's just pick one. Standish, Maine prohibits the storage of pesticides within the shoreland zone, right? So this is an example. It doesn't have, this is all pesticides. So that's great. A good idea not to store pesticides near the shore, right? Dover, New Hampshire, resolution calling for the use of least toxic pesticides only when necessary, and includes a plan to phase out synthetic fertilizer use. So you can see here that there's just a lot of really great things going on. Hope Valley, Rhode Island, the Soccer Association playing fields have been cared for organically since the early 1990s. How awesome, right? So there's a lot of good things happening. Great. New York, ordinance that restricts highly toxic pesticides use and encourages a limited IPM program. And that, I believe, is for the whole city. So, yeah, that's great. Julie, you had something to say?
No, that's fine. I've said enough.
Okay. All right. Well, we can always talk more. Okay, let's email each other later as well. Okay.
I just want to solve problems, local problems and personal problems, because we've got to know that we can at least protect ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, we do. All right. So, Anne, can you say what you want to say while I'm unsuspending my tabs here? Because I know I need to share some more news before we sign off, but go ahead. Did you want to say something, Anne?
I don't have a lot. I don't have a big, long talk to say. I just want to say that I went to this thing called the Art Farm this weekend, and it's a farm out by Holy Hill Cathedral that has 4 times a year. They invite all these craftspeople out there, and it's really cool. They got all these barns full of people selling stuff, and then they have, of course, people selling vegetables outside. So I went up to buy some garlic to plant. and was talking to them, and there were a bunch of people standing around. So I asked him what else he grew on his farm, and he started rattling stuff off, and then he said soybeans. And I said, really? I said, what kind of soybeans? I said, are you using pesticides? And he said, oh yeah, we have to on the soybeans. And so I said, so we started to talk. I started talking to him about the trial. I started talking about 1 part per trillion, you know, and all the different things. And I ran back to the car. I got some pamphlets. By this time, there's other people listening what's going on. And I said, you know, he said, well, what are we supposed to do? I said, well, grow something else. I said, but this, I said, you say you're only spraying it on the field. That doesn't matter. It's getting into the groundwater. It's getting into the wells. It's getting into everything. And they had no idea. They never even heard of the Monsanto trial, which to me, I think is just unbelievable that not everybody knows about the trial. But so anyway, he gave me his card. So I'm sending him to Moms Across America into the data page. And, you know, I don't know if I could send him over to John Kemp or...
Absolutely.
You know, other
Advancing Eco Agriculture, John Kemp. Absolutely. A great person. Gabe Brown.
He was like a really cool, he was like a hippie type guy. So I thought, you know, I was like actually kind of surprised when he said that. So,
well, here's the thing. Yeah. We're all living in our own universe. We're the center of our own universe. And for many of us, that does not include anything outside of what we're interested in and focused on. And so, you know, I know a lot of people get really upset at people that don't know about certain things, but we're all focusing on what matters to us. And for him, if it's growing this food and that's it, and maybe he likes golf, maybe he likes, I don't know, something else. And then that's how he divides his time. That's it, you know? And so it's great that he met you. I'm sure you gave him an earful. And I'm so glad.
I did. My friend Michelle was, you know, as soon as he said soybeans, I looked at her and she rolled her eyes and she was like, oh God, here we go.
Yes, here we go.
So yeah.
Yeah, I want to share with everybody the new data page. If you haven't been to our website, we reorganized everything. Instead of having it just like the most recent data at the top and then a giant list of data, we segregated everything out according to health issues. So that at the top is just the GMO issues. But with glyphosate herbicides, you can see here's human and animal studies. And the most recent are at the top, okay? But these are the human animal studies. Here's insects, here's soil and water and farming. There's marine life, reproductive issues, gut and behavior issues, organ, liver, and kidney disease, carcinogenic effects, neurotoxic effects, glyphosate testing, resource papers and scientists' letters on glyphosate, the impact of pesticides. So this involves all different kinds of pesticides, not just glyphosate, and gene editing, RNA. This one should be up by GMOs, by the way, and we should move this up to under GMOs. And then video links to specific videos and books and websites, health solutions. You know, there's things here about some things of what you can do. Of course, this is not all that you can do, but this is some of the things. And then the benefits of eating organic. These are some studies that show that organic is more nutritious.
This is an incredible resource. Oh my gosh.
It is really, it's pretty awesome. We've been accumulating this over 5 years. Now, keep in mind, these are only like 100 or so studies, but there's like over 1,000 or two of these, but we've only been putting in the ones that we feel like are the most pertinent and most important and you know, obviously the newest, the ones that really can kind of, that people can get too. You know, I mean, these are very difficult to read, but the ones that relate the most to it. You know, there's many other studies about, I don't know, glyphosate's impact on certain insects or certain types of fish. Do you know what I mean? That are really specific, that may not relate as much. People may not relate as much to them. So, okay. So before
I send people here all the time. I mean, I don't know if you see the responses on half of the blog posts I do. I send people here.
Yeah, to the data page.
Yeah.
Now they may not go in and read the studies, right? But they can see them and they can see the overall impact of what's happening. And you know, and I get these studies from scientists and farmers pretty much right away, a lot of the times. But you know, what's really important to point out is that many of these studies I have to mute somebody because it's echoing for me. Okay, there we go. So many of these studies are, have been around for many years. For instance, I had to go to South Korea and talk to an activist there who told me that Stephanie Seneff unveiled for him, or, you know, in one of her talks, he learned from Stephanie Seneff here in America that Acetobacter, which is in persimmon vinegar, degrades glyphosate. And then I came back because I couldn't find persimmon vinegar in Korea at the time, and I obviously couldn't bring enough back with me even if I could. She said, well, it's in apple cider vinegar, kombucha, and sauerkraut. So I had to go to Korea to learn about a product in my own kitchen. I have all of those in my own kitchen that's actually degrades glyphosate. It breaks it down into non-toxic components and actually degrades the molecule. So the glyphosate is no longer there. It's broken down in all these little parts and is no longer glyphosate. But that study was written in 2010. And I didn't know about this for 8 years. So this is part of the problem, is that scientists are doing great work, but the public is not finding out about it. The general public does not go to a scientific journal and read these scientific studies. So we need groups like ours and, you know, other groups that look at the science and write articles about it that the public understands. Now, I would be doing this every day because there's new studies coming out now practically every day. Oh yes, we'll talk about that. But I'm so overwhelmed, honestly, with so many campaigns and so many things we're doing. We're supposed to be fundraising right now so that we can actually keep going next year. You know, there's so many things that I need to do, and we really do need to build a team and a staff so that we can do these type of things. But if anybody ever has the hankering to write up a brief summary of these new scientific studies that come out, we would love to have more people on our team support us with getting that information out to people, because there are new studies happening, you know, all the time, and people need to understand what's going on. So, okay, so I'm going to share a little bit. There's some news before we go that I want to touch on. I won't be able to get through to everything, but sorry, these tabs were supposed to be unsuspended. But one of them is about the study that Anne just showed us in this book. Hang on a second. Here it is. I'll go to this one first. So sorry that you're seeing a blank screen, but so this was this is probably the most incredible news this week. Some of the most incredible news of our whole cause is that the creator of the GMO potatoes, his name is Caius Romans, I hope I'm saying that right, is revealing the hidden dangers of the GMO potatoes that he created in this exclusive interview on Sustainable Pulse and in his book called Pandora's Potatoes, The Worst GMOs, released on Amazon. I've just ordered my book. I hope you all can at least read this article if you don't order the book. But you've got to see in this article, it's totally amazing. He says things like, for instance, they were biased, right? I truly believe that my potatoes were perfect, just like a parent believes that his or her child are perfect. I was biased, and all genetic engineers are biased. It's not just an emotional bias. We need the GMO crops to be approved. There is a tremendous amount of pressure to succeed, to justify our existence by developing modifications that create hundreds of millions of dollars in value. We test our GMO crops to confirm their safety, not to question their safety. So he's being very clear that they test to make sure that they have a certain outcome, which is to confirm their safety, right? They're not doing what scientists are supposed to be doing, which is to ask questions, right? So there's some really damning statements in this article. Let me see if I can get to the ones that, looking back at myself and my colleagues, I believe now that we were all brainwashed, that we all brainwashed ourselves. We believed that the essence of life was a dead molecule, DNA, and that we could improve life by changing this molecule in the lab. We also assumed that theoretical knowledge was all we needed to succeed, and that a single genetic change would always have one intentional effect only. He goes on to say basically that we knew enough to be dangerous, right? And that they basically don't know what they're doing, that they just figure out enough, you know, to manipulate things and to change things, but they really don't know what the end result will be. And I'm sorry, we don't have time to to look through all of this, but let me see.
Well, then,
Yes. Go ahead.
right in the books, by the way, the book's only about 70 pages long. So, and it's it's easy to understand.
Okay.
But right in the introduction, he says, after I left the laboratory and reconsidered my past work, I began to realize my mistakes, and I understood that my potatoes are not what they appear to be. They spread sickness, death, and other evils when released, just like Pandora's open box, so I named them Pandora's potatoes. And he's explaining how he did it in a way that we can understand it. So I'm looking forward to finishing it.
Very good. And I'm sure you're going to get some great infographics out of it as well. Yeah, great. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate it. And I'll have mine coming soon. I'm sure we'll be looking at that together. All right. So that, that is huge because, basically he's blowing the lid off of the GMO conspiracy, basically, around GMOs, that they know what they're doing. Another testing that came out this past week, or maybe even the week before, was that the FDA has tested for glyphosate. So has Cornell. And they're showing, of course, that glyphosate residues are in corn, soybeans, and pet food. And the levels are super high. They're, 5,500 parts per billion, 13,000 parts per billion, 10,000 parts per billion, really, really high. I was so sorry to see glyphosate in popcorn. I thought popcorn was pretty safe. I mean, I only buy organic popcorn anyway, but I thought that was pretty safe. The interesting thing is that there's, of course, spin on this, and the spin is that the FDA did not find levels that were above. Okay, so right here, 99% were found to be in compliance with the federal EPA pesticide residue standards, and 4,276 imported food samples were tested. 90% were found to be in compliance. So what they're trying to basically say is that our food is safe, that we don't have to worry about it. But we all know that these standards are not safe for us, and that we don't accept the fact that these standards are supposed to be safe for us. And also, what is interesting about this issue is that they did not test for oats. They didn't test for some of the most highly sprayed, like oats and barley and some of the foods that are the most highly sprayed for glyphosate. So I think they specifically left out particular food crops that are sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent, so that wouldn't be part of the pool of the foods tested, right? And showing that glyphosate has contaminated our food supply at high levels. Yes, Julie. Wait, hang on. You're muted. Let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
In Canada, they said that glyphosate or Roundup was not approved for that harvest testing, the pre-harvest testing. And so that you mean
pre-harvest as a drying agent?
Right. It wasn't approved to do that. So they're doing it off label. So
that may be so in Canada. In the US, it was approved in 2012, according to the farmers that I know of, but it may not have been approved in Canada. I have seen Canadian agriculture news, blog sites say that we do not recommend using glyphosate as a drying agent before harvest. We do recommend using it as a herbicide before harvest. So the end result is the same thing. They're spraying glyphosate on the crop before harvest, but it's just what they say they're doing it for is, the wordsmithing, in order to be legal, I suppose. So it's, it's all semantics in that sense, and it's totally ridiculous. So
yeah, but if the EPA is saying that it's within the limits, is it just for that one food? I mean, we did that meme where they were showing like what an entire breakfast would contain. So I don't get it. There could be so much glyphosate in this food and so much glyphosate in that food. And if you're eating this all day long.
Yes. So, but what they say is that parts per million are allowed in our food supply. And what we're finding is parts per billion. So they're saying it's safe. They're completely discounting the fact that, number one, glyphosate bioaccumulates. So even if you do eat a small amount every day, it's going to bioaccumulate in your bone marrow and your tendons and your liver and your kidney and all of that. It's going to bioaccumulate. And number two, those EPA allowable levels, the residue levels and the allowable daily intake levels were set for a 175-pound grown man. They're not set for an infant or for a mother that's carrying a fetus in her womb, right? And also they're not taking into consideration that 1 part per trillion was shown to increase the growth of breast cancer cells. And I promise you, they're not taking this into consideration because most men don't get breast cancer. There is a sexism happening in this food industry that is happening around the world of ignoring the health risks that women endure from being exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals and their fetuses, that is not being addressed, because that's not something that the men that are in power have to be concerned about. It's really concerning. I mean, when I see all of this hoopla about glyphosate being a carcinogen, I'm like, what about it being an endocrine disruptor? There are many studies showing that. So I sent a letter to the California EPA, OEHA, this past week, saying, here are the studies showing that glyphosate is an endocrine disruptor. Can you please reassess the listing of glyphosate to have it listed not just as a carcinogen, but as an endocrine disruptor? And this was just glyphosate alone. There are many other studies. I sent them, I think it was about 6 links to 6 different studies. There are many other studies that show that Roundup, right, the final formulation, is endocrine disrupting and causing birth defects and miscarriages and all of that. But I only sent them the ones on glyphosate because that's all they're assessing, right? That's all that their policy has them to assess. And so I'm furious that glyphosate is not listed as an endocrine disruptor as well. And I think personally, I personally believe it has something to do with most of the people in power being men that aren't as concerned with it impacting them, personally. And that has to change. We have to have people stand up and speak up for the rights of, unborn children and mothers and people who are experienced get breast cancer. So so there's a lot in this area. Also, or the Organic Consumers Association tested masa and found glyphosate in as much as some flour samples tested as high as 94.15% for the presence of genetically modified organisms. And I thought this was also testing for glyphosate. Yes. So they are, exposing that more and more corn and masa have toxic residues of Monsanto's weed killer. And also, yes, okay, here, 17.59 parts per billion of glyphosate. And they also tested positive for GMOs. So GMOs and glyphosate is what we are consuming if you're having tacos and chips and all that are not organic. Okay, so this was back to the potato issue. Really exciting article. I hope you guys read that. Also, very important article, glyphosate and dicamba herbicides. These are the two very common pesticides, increase antibiotic resistance in bacteria. Now, this means MRSA. This means the spread of bacterias that can kill people without any, like such as salmonella, right, and E. coli, without any resistance to antibiotics, with no remedy. So this means, helping to wipe out the human population.
That's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. If this increases, it reduces our ability to fight off harmful bacteria. So this is huge. And every single doctor on the planet, every single, people like Dr. Don Huber, who studied pathogens used in wartime. This is the kind of thing that they would say is a national security threat right here.
Biological warfare is what it is.
Yeah, biological warfare. So, so very concerning. Here's another article on agriculture bioweapon, is that DARPA, which is the, let me get the Defense Advanced Research Projects, what's the last word? DARPA. I don't know what the last word is. I can't read my own writing. So DARPA, anyway, it's funded by the Department of Defense, right? It's a program that looks at biological weapons. So here it is. Okay. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA, it's an arm of the U.S. Department of Defense, is funding the genetic modification of insects so that they can, see here, tiny bugs that fed by sucking sap from plants, infected plants with a virus that temporarily brought about a trait. But researchers are also trying to see if viruses can alter the plant's genes themselves to be resistant to dangers throughout the plant's life. Now, I would assert that if this is DARPA, they're not just looking to see if they can make the plant resistant to certain traits. They're probably also, wouldn't they love to have bugs that go into a certain area where their enemy is and kill off the whole crop? Like, for instance, opium or hemp, or maybe even their food source, right? They would love to go in and cut off the food source of an enemy. Now, sounds like it might be effective, but what if these bugs decide to come on over to our side of the fence, right? Absolutely. This is just tinkering in an area where human beings are not supposed to be going, in my opinion.
Just because we can do it doesn't mean we should.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Anne.
I just don't understand why the U.S. has got so many chemicals when everybody else is screaming, don't give us your chemicals. It's terrible what's going on in the United States.
Yeah.
Money.
The United States,
industry driven, it's not people driven, and somehow we got to get back in control.
Yes. So thank you for speaking on that. We're going to end because it's 6:20. We're way over time, but we're going to end on getting back in control means, I hope all of you knowing who you're voting for. The election season is coming up, and there are all kinds of people running for offices which can impact us, like we talked about earlier, the school board, Ed, our representatives, people in our senators in office that can make very important decisions which control our lives. So I really do urge everyone to question, what is the candidate that you're voting for how are they getting funded? Who is funding them? Are there large corporations, chemical companies, big oil? Who's funding them? What kind of decisions might they make if they're in office? And take that action today. Oh, Isabel, I don't know if she's still with us, but she did ask the question about what do we say at booths and what can we do, at our booths. Here's one little thing that we did at the Heirloom Expo was I drew a picture of a sunflower, and I had little segments in the sunflower that people could color in. And as they took a stack of 100 flyers, they would get to color in a little segment. And we crunched the math, and we figured out that if we gave out, I think at this particular expo, because there were, maybe 20,000 people attending, if we gave out, I think it was 26 stacks of the flyers, that would be, is that 26,000? 26. Anyway, if we gave out a certain number of flyers, we would cause a $20 billion shift to organic or something like that, right? Because if each person that got one of those flyers shifted over and spent either $100 or $200 a week on organic food, they would be causing that shift, right, to organic in their area. So I would invite you just to crunch the numbers on the stacks of flyers that you have and give people a whole stack. If you have that much, you can order more from us, or we can send you another box. And say, would you leave this stack of flyers at your library, right? Because you want people to leave taking action. You don't want to just say, hi, do you know about Moms Across America? Would you like to take a flyer? Because they'll take one or two, they'll jam it in their purse or in their car door, and they won't look at it again. We need them to be taking action. And one way that they can take action is to drop off a stack of flyers at their library, their senior center, their office, right? The kitchen in their office. And these flyers are great. They say, why eat organic? They're not scary looking. We don't have skulls all over them. And they talk about the impact on health, farming and economy, and climate change. And so we've gotten great feedback, about them. And that's something that you can do in an ask, because you're only going to have a very short period of time, right, with them. So
what should I order when I go to the tribe to speak in November?
So first of all, you could list your event, and then when you list your event on Moms Across America under events, you get a code for a free box of materials, because we know you're serious, right? And we want to support people who are willing to have an event. You know, if you want to just order them, you can, but
Okay.
with our system, you have to pay money to do that. So I encourage you to list your event, and that way we can share your event too with other people. We can help get people to go there, and you can connect with new people. And so when you list the event under events on our website, you get an automatic email with a free code for a box of materials. All you do is pay for shipping, and then you can get about 1,000 flyers, and the bulk of them are the Why Eat Organic flyers and the We Can Do Better flyers, which are all about the toxins in our food supply. If you want to, let's pull up the new flyer. Hang on a second. The new flyer that we have out is our Healthy Schools Initiative flyer. I had this open, but we changed to our Healthy Schools Initiative flyer. I'm really happy about this. Anne was just working on this and finished it up, and we are happy to get this out. So this new flyer, Healthy Schools Initiative, is actually 2 flyers, which you can print out from your own computer. They print out very nicely. I've tried it. And they address the problem about how there's GMOs in our food supply, right? And glyphosate. And it gives them an introduction to the solution, meaning that the school can switch over to non-genetically modified organic local food options for their kids. And this organization has done it. Turning Green has a group called Conscious Kitchen. And we're asking them to consider switching over their food. And then the second flyer, which we hope we will give to the same person, the PTA or school president or school board, or school principal, I mean, is the problem is that we are spraying glyphosate, right, on our school grounds, and that we can do better, right? And for instance, we have this quote here from Lee Johnson, who says, "I never would have sprayed the product on school grounds or around people if I knew it would cause them harm. It's unethical and it's wrong." And so we're saying that we can do better. There's all of these different, right, towns and schools that are doing better. And here's what a healthy school looks like. We serve our children fresh, local, organic, seasonal, non-GMO food. We use safe, toxin-free pest and weed management. We use safe, toxin-free cleaning solutions and products. And by taking these steps, you'll be listed as a healthy school champion by Moms Across America. And so we're going to be starting the page with a wall of fame. Yes.
Are you sharing the screen? Because I don't see it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was sharing the screen. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
How can we access this? Because I'd actually like it to bring it to school tomorrow.
Yes, you can access
It's
it
up on the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right on the Moms Across America.
Great.
Toxin-free town.
Yeah, so here's the Healthy Schools Initiative, the problem, the solution. Here's the Healthy Schools Initiative environment, the problem, where of course is glyphosate and other toxic chemicals. And here's what a healthy school looks like, and here's our map. I'm so sorry, I thought I was sharing. Okay, so it's,
Great.
I think, yeah, and here, by the way, we don't list exact, specific alternatives, but we do say you can go to the integrative pest management plans, such as those found on Beyond Pesticides, and the 10 alternatives to Roundup comments is found on Moms Across America. And so we do direct people to, where you can go to get the information about what alternatives to use. There's just so much information to put on this flyer. We couldn't, put all of the alternatives as well. So yeah, I'm excited to share that. Thank you, Anne, for putting that together. And if anybody sees anything, we just put it out there. If you see anything that needs to be changed, we've had, I think, at least 4 or 5 people look at it and let us know if there were typos or changes that need to be made. But if you still see anything, we could still, fix it and upload it. And for a poster, you can get your posters also on Moms Across America's website. There is a Why Eat Organic poster. And we love to either ask for $1 for that or, give it to especially doctors' offices, chiropractors, health food stores, for them to hang up in their waiting room or in their, the entrance as people come and go to know why eat organic. And you can say, come find out how to create no, we've been using toxin-free community. There is a group called non-toxic communities, and there's non-toxic Irvine. We've been just saying toxin-free town, but that's totally up to you. You can say whatever, you know, works best for you. And we have a banner on our website under materials that you can download and order. You can send to Staples and order that. It's usually like $49, maybe. It's not very expensive. Usually get about 6 foot by 2 foot. That'll fit on the front of a table. And that says creating healthy communities. So that's pretty all encompassing. We like that. It's not just, you know, GMO free towns or whatever. It's creating healthy communities. So anybody else have any other questions about that before we go? No? Okay. Well, thank you for asking, Isabel. We hope you have a great time at your booth. And and also make sure when you get that box of materials, you get stickers and buttons. Put those out in the front of the table and let people just take the stickers. We do ask $1 for buttons, usually for donations. So you can recoup your cost if people donate. You can have a little box or a basket for donations, and you can recoup your cost that it cost you for, you know, to pay for shipping. So we go off sort of a gentleman's ladies agreement that the money that you get, you'll use for, you know, educating people for educational outreach. Right? Great. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Kelly, thanks again for being on. And Julie, let's be in touch, okay, about those solutions.
Thank you.
You're gonna call me, or you're gonna send me a message, right?
You're gonna email me the links, and you're gonna warm intro me to the owners, please, is my request.
The links and owners. Okay. Great.